This is Howard Nema, and this is We Are Change. Starting this show sort of like on a sad note. A very good friend of mine unfortunately passed away yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to actually see him. He had been sick, but had recovered. He had cancer, of course. Another young person who has succumbed to cancer, and it sort of just amplifies the fact that if you all just sit down and think about this for a moment, the people that you know in your life who have been affected by cancer and have died, or been treated and then died later, or have been treated and lived. Unfortunately, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that most of these deaths are occurring rapidly between age groups in the 40 to 55 range. And a lot of people in their 40s and 50s are getting cancer. In this case, my friend Mel, it started with cancer of the bladder, which ended up somehow metastasizing to a brain tumor after he had his chemotherapy. And I don't want to digress too much because it's just obviously, you know, we all know people that have been touched by cancer. But why cancer? And why are cancer rates, you know, through the roof? Now, this is really off the cuff. I usually have a lot of stuff prepared, but I certainly didn't expect to be talking right now about cancer. But from my research, I have discovered that there is a tremendous link, and in fact 100 million people in America who were given the original polio shots received SV40 simian virus, which is a cancer-causing carcinogen. In fact, Dr. Hildebrand, who laughed that we should give it to the Russians so they would all be having tumors and they wouldn't be able to fight us. And they did a lot of tests on you know, of course, lab rats and everything else, and interestingly enough, they did the tests on small animals, similarly like they did the test with the GMO foods, and they knew clearly what was going on, and yet, of course, they still put it out there. Merck, of course, is funded by Rockefeller, put out the SV40 simian virus and other, I think it was another 70 viruses into these shots, and we wonder why there's all these illnesses and why things are happening. And yet, take more drugs and take Boniva, even though it doesn't do anything, and the FDA actually made them say something, but they don't really make them amplify it, so they just make them change the wording in an ad. It's a joke. Anyway, enough of my rant on the medical system or the big pharma taking care of cancer and causing it. We certainly know that autism and multiple sclerosis are also on the rise. We know that fluoride causes dental fluorosis, it causes bone cancer. We know that aspartame is deadly. We know that all of these things are deadly, yet there's nothing to do about, you know, there's nothing to be, no one tries to say, well, let's get that taken out or do it from the government, forget about the FDA, all in bed with the big food and the chemical industry here and the food additives. It's just unbelievable. Monsanto. So, of course, you know, I don't even expect much to happen except really realizing that cancer is on the rise, and all of these ailments are on the rise because of what's going on into the food, what we eat, the vaccines, and the water that we drink. What they call acceptable levels are really, it's just unbelievable. Recently, Fukushima, they just raised the levels of acceptability because they're higher. I mean, it's just madness, and people are going around not paying attention, not really understanding what this all means. And they wonder why cancer is through the roof, and they wonder why people are getting cancer, like, and they say, well, it's because of all the smoking. You know, well, you can blame smoking. What about people that never smoked that get lung cancer? What about that? There's no understanding. Well, what about the leukemia? What about the autism rates? 40 years ago, it was 1 in 15,000. I mean, and now it's in some areas, 1 in 10 or 15. That's insane. And you're telling me that it has nothing to do with all of these vaccines that the children are given, ADHD deficiencies and everything else. It has nothing to do with that. And vaccine companies have never been caught putting anything in the vaccines. Never. Of course, on record, they've been caught many times. And the same thing goes for the fact that many of these drugs, including the drugs that are made, for regular consumption, are actually made in China. So you're trusting drugs that are manufactured in China to be ingested. Meanwhile, supposedly, we're supposed to have this safe standards. And we know that China sends toys with lead. It's a big fraud. Everyone's got to wake up that this is a huge fraud. These corporations and the owners of these corporations have taken control of the regulatory bodies. They pay off politicians, they pay off city officials, they pay off whoever they need to get their agenda across into their areas. They make big infrastructure investments. They do all sorts of things to intertwine themselves into the relationship with where they want to go and where they want to be. And once they've done that, it's just fleece the population. And that's exactly what they're doing. And consolidate and bring in their corporate interests and knock out the little guy. Put the regulations in place to benefit them, while it'll make it impossible for the small guy to survive. This is what is called collectivism. Now, you want to talk about what collectivism can lead to, and you can understand this corporate, profit over people. You say greed, corporate greed, money greed, everything. Well, listen to this article. This is actually very current. This is from yesterday, the 14th. Boss told me to stop giving dying co-worker CPR, says service rep. Last month, a Time Warner cable service rep died at her desk. After any unexplained death, people have searched for answers, explanations. In this case, a co-worker had began giving CPR to 67-year-old Julia Nelson, a supervisor who had allegedly told her to stop and get back on the phone and take care of customers. Unbelievable. So this woman is trying to save this 67-year-old woman's life, and a supervisor told her to get back on the phone and take care of customers. Then this woman, Nelson, slumped at her desk at Time Warner call center. There you go. Hi, Time Magazine, Time Warner, Nazis, the Rockefeller interests. Oh, how nice. Of course, you have to keep putting you got to remember all the things that in history have proven to be evil that they put on their covers. Just think about Time. Think about it. Adolf Hitler, Time Magazine. Eco-fascism. Shredding the Constitution. Countless things. Does the Constitution matter? Transhumanism, the way of the future. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so this Time Warner call center in Garfield Heights, Ohio, Nelson wasn't breathing, and by the time paramedics arrived, she had basically died. That's pretty sad. But today is also an excellent day, because today is the global day of global occupancy. I guess protesters get under the way. In Rome, looks like people are going wild already, torching cars and smashing up windows. Urging people to rise up. Seeing this anonymous figure type thing, and I think anonymous is a very, very possible, if not complete. In fact, Harry Link disclosed this the other night. It is actually a COINTELPRO to create the events. Again, this is how these things, if you really think about the logic and the theory behind it, or I should say how would you orchestrate all these people to have some sort of cohesive bond? You have to have a force that's guiding it. And in this case, the force is guiding it, stating that it is for liberty and for everything else, yet of course it probably has a hidden agenda once they reach whatever goal they're trying to achieve. In this case, But certainly the people that are out there are angry. But don't be misguided by all these people that are, calling for various things and smashing windows, and don't think that these people aren't paid to do that, or COINTELPRO agents to cause riots, to ask for more police action. Because if this this is a non-violent demonstration for change, not a Bastille, storming of the Bastille type thing here. This is not taking over of violence to take a violent revolution. It is a revolution in ideas and in ideology and realization that you have people that are being manipulated by the banking system, people that are literally slaves to the society. Now just think about it. You pay taxes on everything. You pay taxes on your car, you pay taxes on your house, you pay taxes on everything that you purchase, you pay taxes on your toilet paper, you pay taxes on food. Now they make different types of food taxable, and then this isn't taxable. You pay taxes on all the products you buy. Then the state taxes your income, and maybe your city taxes your income, depending on where you live. And then the federal government taxes you. Then you might want to, I don't know, get a hunting license or a fishing license, and they tax you for that too. I mean, you need all these licenses, all these regulations, and it's all ways to just keep bleeding money out of you. And it's just an endless tax system. And the money, you say, well, where's all this money going? I mean, what is it? Well, it's most of it is actually fraud. I mean, the Grace Commission report from 1982, which was completed in 1984, that Reagan commissioned to find out where everybody's income tax money went, discovered that it went to interest to pay debt to the Federal Reserve owners, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. So, wake up. They're paying us money and we're giving it back to them. Do you understand? It's slavery. And then they put us in debt to buy things that if these restraints were taken away, we'd be able to obtain without going into debt in many cases, depending on how, I mean, buying a house, maybe not, but the whole idea is that you would have more income, you'd have more wealth. They don't want us to have wealth. They're consolidators. They consolidate wealth. This is what they do. It's all that they do, is they consolidate, they expand economies, build them up, and then take everything you got. That's basically what they do. They build you up and shear you down. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. And you look at history, and it happens over and over again. Andrew Jackson knocks out the banks, boom. What happens after Andrew Jackson knocks out the banks? The Rothschilds contract the money supply in 1837, and there's the first Great Depression. And it was a pretty bad one. And then there are other depressions that they don't even advertise. In 1888, they don't make as much press. Of course, the Great Depression was actually a great engineering feat. First, all the robber barons get together, and the Rothschilds, mixed with the Rockefellers, the Loebs and the Lazar family and others, purchased the shares in the Federal Reserve that now is basically paying interest on debt that it creates every time a dollar is made. And the IRS is the strong-arm collection agency that collects the money. So when the IRS collects the money is directly going to pay interest on the dollars that were printed. It amplifies the fact that if you all just sit down and think about this for a moment, the people that you know in your life who have been affected by cancer and have died, or been treated and then died later, or have been treated and lived. Unfortunately, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, a sad note, a very good friend of mine unfortunately passed away yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to actually see him. He had been sick, but had recovered. He had cancer, of course, another young person who has succumbed to cancer. And it's sort of just that most of these deaths are occurring rapidly between age groups in the 40 to 55 range. And a lot of people in their 40s and 50s are getting cancer. In this case, my friend Mel, it started with cancer of the bladder, which ended up somehow metastasizing to a brain tumor after he had his chemotherapy. And I don't want to digress too much because it's just obviously, we all know people that have been touched by cancer. But why cancer? And why are cancer rates, Welcome. This is Nema, and this is We Are Change. Starting this show sort of like on a